Thank you very much, and thank you, the Envision presidents, Mario and Adita at Princeton, for inviting me to be here. It's a real pleasure to participate in this summit. I'm going to talk to you now about artificial intelligence and its potential impact on our lives. But I'll begin before that by giving you a short historic perspective of my work in the technology sector for the decades that I've been at. Now, I started my computing career back in the 1970s programming the first generation IBM mainframes. Katie, have you got that old picture so we can show? Yes. Now, I think this was taken in 1977. I was in the machine room, and if you see at the far right, in my hand, I'm clutching my program on a deck of cards, the printout under my arms, and I'm in a nail biting mode because machine time back then was so scarce, and us programmers, we had very limited access time to machines. You see a punch card on the top right. Actually, behind me, there is the line printer, 600 lines per minute. These are in the back. There was the big disk drives. There's 100 meg. You couldn't even lift it. It's portable disk drives. You'll see at the far bottom of this picture the old magnetic tape drives, IBM, and right above that is a punch card machine. It's incredible. Huh? It's incredible how far we have come in this last 4 decades. Now, if I was to start talking about what I've done, throughout my life, my work has always been in system design and software engineering. In the past 45 years, I've worked on computers almost the size of a house, to ones that you can wear or fit in your pockets. It didn't matter really to me which sector I was in. I worked in research, I worked in pharmaceutical, I worked in industrial, services, and other sectors. I've been really lucky. Information technology is everywhere. And as such, I've never really had to relate to any sector boundaries. I found, in fact, that I was able to borrow good ideas from one sector and deploy them successfully in another. It was an advantage and not a disadvantage to my career. I witnessed from the inside, if you like, or at first hand, how every facet of our life has been transformed by information technology over the last 4 decades. It was, as I heard described once, like being on it really felt like being on a speeding train. You don't know where it's going, but cannot afford not to be on it. That's how it felt. The tools we were working on, from hardware platform, peripheral devices, operating systems, network and communication protocols, to programming languages, were continuously changing. Equally, the problems we were trying to solve and the systems we were designing were changing too. So it was a continuous catch-up. My survival plan was to continuously keep my knowledge and skills evolving and do away with old thinking to allow the new thinking and imagination to step in. This was the hardest part I found, but equally necessary part. Parting with knowledge that you've invested years of your life learning is hard, but so necessary. Now, this reminds me of a story I heard years ago that I will share with you. Apparently, a senior researcher was once asked why she always selects the youngest of her team to tackle the toughest challenges. And she replied, because they don't know it cannot be done. Now, I really agree with this rationale, especially when it comes to information technology. The IT sector is continuously changing and transforming itself. And it's not going to mature anytime soon, not certainly in my life. And in such an environment, I think hanging on to outdated knowledge and assumptions can really result in a big blind spot. I found personally in my working life that whenever I've embraced change and not resisted it or shied away from it, good things have happened. Change is inevitable. And so my message really is to embrace change and find always meaningful ways to be part of it and not shy away from it. So if I was to look back, if I had to pick the most exciting change that I've witnessed in computers, I think it will be in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, when the power of computers or affordable computers grew from performing mathematical symbol manipulations to performing all symbol manipulations. Now that was a big step. It allowed, amongst other things, allowed us to transform the user experience talking to machines, how we communicate, and it ushered a big thing, analytical processing. What followed with the unprecedented advances in data storage and parallel processing is the emergence of knowledge discovery systems. These systems that started in the early 90s, we started to deploy them. They were deployed to doing charted and uncharted data mining techniques such as deep learning, fuzzy logic, decision trees, rule induction reasoning, memory-based reasoning, link analysis, genetic algorithms, all sorts of exciting stuff. And many of them still in use today. But the one that really stuck out of all of these is deep learning, as it's been now successfully deployed in numerous installations and is gaining popularity fast. Now that is so exciting because many of our existing processes will require rethinking given the high optimization that we can achieve with AI today. Now, with change always comes expectations. And one of the challenges I've encountered is the ability to understand the potential and limitations of new technologies to avoid the ups and downs that arise from mismanaging expectations. And I've seen it happen so many times. It's so important to remember that hypes always surround new technologies, and it's best to avoid them. And we've seen it today. There's a huge hype on how AI is going to render most of us useless. It has been said that it will become smarter than humans, and it will take over our lives and jobs, and will become the inferior indigenous species. Now, we should be careful what we believe. It's all nonsense. Such claims are based on hyperinflated expectations that cannot be taken seriously. One thing we need to take seriously, though, is to get anything meaningful from AI, we need data. And we need good data and lots of it. We also need lots of humans to continuously organize, validate, and classify this data to ensure that patterns that might trick AI systems into a wrong classification, and it happens a lot, all outcomes are identified and corrected. AI, unfortunately, does not have common sense, but we do. You know, if I was starting my career all over again, I think I would not choose coding. I would probably go into data analytics. I really believe data analytics is now where the big value in information technology is. So turning to the topic of my talk, AI and intelligence without reasoning, can we trust it? Now, by AI here, I mean deep learning, or what is also referred to as artificial narrow intelligence. As for what we hear now of artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence, well, these concepts are still in the very early philosophical and theoretical stages, so I will not be touching on them. It was, I think, Alan Turing, the brilliant scientist, as you know, and mathematician, who is attributed with being the father of artificial intelligence. He published a scientific paper, you may have known, in the late 50s entitled, Can Machines Think? Now, this short paper laid the foundation for AI experimentations for nearly 70 years. So in essence, the Turing test has become the standard for testing intelligent systems. Now, AI is probably the most significant technological innovation we've seen since the microchip, I think. It's the new revolution, really. We will see more smart systems and devices collaborating with us in almost every facet of our lives. It will lay the foundation for the fourth industrial revolution. It will help us transform our societies, optimize what we do, democratize knowledge, empower humans to reach much higher potential. AI is going to allow us to communicate freely, and that's so exciting with machines and natural language. We start to see it with Alexa and Siri. Still early days, but it will get there. It will be the first time we have machines adapting to humans, as opposed to humans adapting to machines on keyboards and stuff. Now, with all that said, it's important that we do not also overstate what AI can do. In the same paper 70 years ago, where Turing laid the grounds for artificial intelligence, he also said something really important, and it's not often, you don't hear it being quoted. He said that the question of whether machines can think is itself too meaningless to deserve discussion. Noam Chomsky, the renowned MIT professor, said on the subject, asking if a machine can think is like saying, can a submarine swim? It's a convenient choice of language, that's all. I also believe, when it comes to AI, that the use of the word intelligence is overstated in describing what's being done. Perhaps artificial intellect is a more apt description. Human intelligence encompasses deductive and inductive thinking. Deep learning and cognitive computing are deductive mathematical models. Intelligence is about imagination, the ability to think beyond the truth of today. Intelligence is about human curiosity and knowing the questions to ask more than knowing the answer. Intelligence is about surviving, coping, adapting, and regenerating in any condition. Intelligence is not about finding patterns in a huge number of examples and modeling them on statistical approximations. We really first need to understand how the human brain works before we can truly claim to build an intelligent computer system that can mimic it or even outsmart it. Scientific discovery is normally ahead of engineering and not the other way around. The human brain remains the holy grail of biological intelligence, and it's the only organ that we still know least about. Only recently, tools have allowed scientists to study it in detail, but we still do not understand how it works beyond its very basic functions. To date, we don't have a brain theory. We don't know the signaling language of the brain. We don't know where consciousness or memory resides. And that is because the human brain is immensely more complex than any other organ in our body. Each of us in our heads have the equivalent in IT terms of a server farm with 83 billion processors or neurons almost. And each processor is different, yet connected through a network of hundreds of millions of dynamic pathways, working and adapting in concert to make us who we are. It never stops. And what's more, unlike other server farms, the energy consumption of the human brain is less than a 100-watt light bulb. In other words, it's insanely efficient and it's extremely complex. And you can charge it with a donut or a hamburger. So it will be a long time before we can begin to unlock the mystery of this organ and thereafter come up with a superior technological or mathematical alternative. We're safe for now. It's also important to consider that human intelligence is based on reasoning, and reasoning can be explained. It's common for us to question experts as to why they have reached a conclusion. And we expect them to use logic or other intangible human or emotional factors to explain their rationale. Now, that's not the case today with the artificial. It's not common with artificial intelligence. There's no reasoning with the artificial intelligence we're producing today. It is not possible to question the rationale behind a neural network. So, how can we fully trust AI when its reasoning cannot be explained? And the answer is simple: we cannot. I believe AI and humans will need to forge a partnership where AI provides the intellectual heavy lifting and humans will have the intelligent final say. Without this partnership, and if we allow AI to have the final say with no human oversight, we will really be ushering in an era of digital tyranny. Thank you so much.